Horror, horror, horror. Horror is hot. Horror films have become a $200 million a year industry, and thanks to the VCR, even very young kids can watch people getting stabbed, shredded, and sautéed right in the comfort of their own living rooms. I want you to check out this scene from the brand new film called Stepfather 2. Now, parents, please take heed. Discretion is advised. It is a violent clip, and you youngsters, although you may be able to watch this movie in theaters, I don't want you to watch it here, so scram.
I cracked open this bottle. Make room for Daddy, huh? After a whole year? Who do you think you are? Huh? You're nothing! You're nobody! You hear me? I want you! I want you gone! 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 Gone!
What do you think? You like it?
That's him.
He's right there. I'm not going to introduce you yet. Some say that all this blood, guts, death, and gore is not only not fun, but not even healthy for kids. And I have some news items that some say prove that point. Item, Massachusetts, 1988. A 19-year-old man kills an 18-year-old woman. The body was hanging by bootlaces from a tree. Later, the guy kills himself. Police say the man was a fan of the Friday the 13th movies and wanted to know what it was like to live out the part of Jason. Another item, Texas, 1987. High school seniors watched the video Faces of Death. Two of the kids then disappear. The next day, the body of one is found near a cemetery. She had been smothered and beaten to death by her friend. Now, in his high school yearbook, the guy had listed his favorite movie as Faces of Death. Another item, New England, 1987. A 5-year-old boy helped his 3-year-old friend to stab a 2-year-old kid 17 times with a knife. Now, afterwards, the kids were talking about Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger. Now, I don't know if there's a connection between the films I mentioned and those dreadful acts of violence, but I promise you that in the next hour, we'll have a hot debate on that topic. You're about to hear it, because horror movies, scared to death, is the focus of this edition. When you watch one of these movies in a theater, if you've ever been in a movie theater and there's lots of kids there, you see lots of the kids actually stand up and cheer every time somebody gets killed. And they usually get killed in the very dramatic way you just saw there in the clip from Stepfather 2. Now, is it all fun and games? I don't know. Maybe not. Watch.
What do you want?
Let's begin with what some people consider the real problem. It's the popularity of these horror movies among kids. Fangoria magazine, for example, is essentially supported by teenagers, who make up most of their subscriber list. 12 and 13-year-olds are holding so-called gross-out parties in their own homes, renting these movies from their neighborhood video store. Most horror movies are rated R, but even preteens can walk right in and get them, no questions asked, even without their parents' permission. To illustrate this point, we asked 3 13-year-olds from suburban Bergen County, New Jersey, to rent some horror movies from their local video store. One of the girls had an account at the store set up by her parents.
We went to the horror section. We bought Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and Halloween 4. We couldn't find any of the ones we wanted, like the gorier ones.
The movies were both rated R when they were in the theaters, yet these girls rented them with no hassles whatsoever. Later, our producer confronted the manager of the store about his rental policies.
Do you rent R-rated movies to kids?
No.
Do you check to make sure they don't?
Off camera, the manager told us that for the most part, he does check that kids don't rent movies that are inappropriate. Of course, our kids had just proved him wrong.
I know people who go to all the video stores in town, and they just, I really doubt that they check. 2 important points. First, we didn't mean to single out this one video store. This probably goes on all across this country. And parents should also be involved in what their kids are watching on television. Second, horror movie producers are now doing films that go directly to home video. They're films too violent for the big screen, some even too violent to show you right now. And of course, there is no rating system for home video.
Uncle? Boogeyman?
Halloween 5. This time, they're ready.
Halloween is the time of year for horror movies, and this year's been a bumper crop. Among them, Halloween 5. This series of films has been relatively cheap to produce, and the first 4 of them have grossed more than $200 million.
Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers.
Once people are captivated by a story idea, they'll go on watching it until they get tired, until it wears itself out, which hopefully this will not do before Halloween 27.
The film's executive producer explains the fine line between suspense and gore.
They go to some films to see how he kills. In Halloween is the stalking of the victim. And you don't know when it's going to happen, and might happen, might not happen. That's really the thrill. The actual kill is not. I mean, it's just a few seconds and it goes.
Suspense or gore, call it what you want. Today's kids love it.
I just think the times have changed. The kids now, they don't get scared by cops and robbers or Indians anymore.
So do you get scared by these films?
No.
What reaction do you have when you see them?
I don't know. I just like them.
What? What about them?
They're just fun to watch, I guess.
Fun to watch, like someone's eyeballs getting cut out and blood all over the place?
Yeah, because you know it's not realistic. You know it's not really happening. It's just fake.
Do you think that, you know, I've read those news items of kids doing those awful things in real life. Do you think that there was any connection between their watching those films and what they did?
Might have been. I'm not sure, really.
Do you ever want to, no, you don't. Okay, let me introduce our panelists, the people who will be engaged in the substantive debate. Now, first, Richard Rubinstein. He's a film producer whose credits are impressive. They include Stephen King's Pet Sematary, Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead was one of my favorites, Creepshow, and the animated children's program Monsters, among others. He says that there is a definite difference in different kinds of horror movies. Some are good for kids and others aren't so good. Terry O'Quinn is the stepfather himself. He is the star of the new movie Stepfather 2. His character, incidentally, is based on John Emil List. He's the business guy from Jersey who allegedly slaughtered his whole family. List disappeared for 18 years and, as you know, was recently apprehended thanks to the program America's Most Wanted. This little angel, 12-year-old Danielle Harris, gives a chilling, a frightening, a very effective performance in the new film Halloween 5. She should be starring in like Mary Poppins movies in there. She's got knives poised over her nose. Tony Timpone is the editor of the fan magazine called Fangoria that we spoke about in the video piece. Here in the expert row, Dr. Danielle Lintz thinks that this kind of film could be very harmful to kids who watch them. He's the author, incidentally, of the new book, The Question of Pornography. Also with us, clinical psychologist who says under the right circumstances it's okay for kids to watch these films. This is Jeffrey Gardere, Dr. Jeffrey Gardere. So welcome, guys. Dr. Lintz, why is it bad? Why is this stuff bad?
Well,
why isn't it just like a cartoon?
I think the problem is that kids become desensitized to violence, and that's a big word for saying they become more callous, they become less sensitive to victims of violence in the real world. Our studies have shown that repeated exposure to this kind of material leads people to judge a victim of rape or judge a victim of domestic battering in some other more realistic situation as less harmed, less injured than would have been the case if they had not been exposed to slasher films.
You buy that, Terry?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about acting in them then?
I don't particularly love acting in them. I mean, there are things that I would rather be doing, oftentimes. But I make a living doing it. And I don't do them regularly any more particularly than I do anything else.
I'm shocked that you agree, essentially, with the doctor who says that they're...
You're not disappointed.
I don't know. Now, Tony, what do you think?
I don't think they have any negative effect. Kids can tell the difference between fantasy and reality. I think it's just entertainment. I don't think kids are desensitized. If anything, they're a turn off to violence, violent movies. They make people sick if you watch them, so why should they want to go out and kill somebody if they've just been sickened by something? The people you mentioned who went out and tried to imitate some acts in those films, anything could have triggered those kids. It could have been a cartoon, it could have been a sports program. They were disturbed to begin with, so to say that the horror films disturbed them is ridiculous.
You know, I heard one of the comments from the kids in the audience earlier about the fact that he didn't take it for real. And I think that that's a very, very important point, that there's a big distinction between fantasy violence and realistic violence. And I think one might be a lot more desensitized by watching the 6 o'clock news, okay, or the discussions about the rape in Central Park that have been very focal here in New York, a lot more than watching a movie where everything is so absurd and so broadly stated that you never forget you're watching a movie.
Danielle, what do you think? Do you think that these depictions of violence are realistic?
They are, because on your news today and your television shows and your papers and all over the world, there are killings and rapes and murders and everything else, and kids are already exposed to it. Horror movies are made up of the news and things that happen. The killings might be a little bit different, but horror movies still are an everyday thing. You know, they happen all over the world.
Now, were you scared when you were making the film? Obviously, you had cameramen all around and everything else, but the guy was choking you at one point, your eyes are rolling, your tongue is hanging out. Wouldn't you rather be doing Mary Poppins? I don't know.
Actually, no. I like horror movies a lot better. They're more of a demanding role, but they're a lot more fun. And I'm not scared because I know the man behind the mask, and you know, everybody's just the special effects man. I see everything in advance, so you know, I'm not scared of doing a horror movie.
Are you surprised? I don't think that kids get enough credit today for being as sophisticated as they are. We live in a different world, and everything has been accelerated, and these kids are getting I'm going to say, exposure to the fast lane. You know, by the time I was 5 years old, I'd barely gotten out of Brooklyn. And these kids have traveled halfway around the world, or they've seen halfway around the world. Television has changed the way we've lived, and I think that their capacities, if you will, to tell right from wrong, okay, and what's real and what's not real is much more than it was a long time ago.
Quickly, characterize that reaction.
Well, I don't know. I think that you may be surprised. I think kids have been around the world, but it's been through the mass media. Unfortunately, what I find disturbing about these films is that very often a child's first exposure to sex will be through a slasher film, not through an X-rated film.
Okay, now hold it, Richard. We got to take a break anyway. So this is he raises the point. All right, now if you see a young woman, and almost invariably the first woman you see in these films is going to be the first victim. I mean, that's almost the blueprint. Will that affect the kid's sexuality and how he perceives women? I mean, that I guess is the essential point. So not only the violence aspect, but the sex aspect is another aspect, to aspect myself to death here, this controversy, and we're going to aspect it as soon as we take this commercial break. Stay with us. Now, that's purely cartoon. I mean, an unraveling mummy?
I'm not concerned about an unraveling mummy. I'm concerned about women being garroted, bludgeoned, and stabbed in the films. And that seems to be
Dr.
all too
Gardere, what
uncommon.
about women being bludgeoned and et cetera?
Well, I don't think that watching these films is their first exposure to that. As one of the panelists here said, you can read about the Central Park jogger and what happened to her. Pick up the Daily News, New York Post, and you can read about violence against women all the time. And another point is that I know many people say that women are the victims of violence in these films, but so are men. Everyone is a victim of violence in these films.
Yeah, I would strongly emphasize that at least for, again, I think that there are horror films and there are horror films, and I think that the best horror films are the ones that mix fun and scare, and where the victims are not discriminated against in a male-female sense, but there are people that are in trouble. You know they're going to get in trouble, and the question is when and how.
Okay, parents, stand up here. What do you think? Should we take it seriously? Is it a threat, or is it just fun?
I believe it's a threat, and especially when children are involved. I really do, because I am scared myself when I watch those movies. And I have a 5-year-old, and every time it goes on television, it's really frightening. And I feel sorry for you. I know you're an actor. You have to make your living.
Don't you take the time to control what your kids see on TV?
I do, but commercial comes on, even when you don't know when it comes on.
You
around
don't have
9
to
o'clock.
watch them either. If you have a distaste for horror films, you just don't watch them.
I know it's not the point that when it comes on television, it's just to say.
But you're saying that you
don't
leave,
let
you leave your
children-
5-year-old unattended in front of the
Don't
set
let
to
children
watch.
be involved. You want to be make movies, frightened movies. Let a grown up, at least they know what they're watching, and they know that it's not real. But children, don't let the children be
I
involved.
think I agree with
Go
that
ahead,
to a
Terry.
certain extent, and I appreciate your sympathy, but being an actor. And I agree to a certain extent with what the doctor said, but I think also that Danielle made a very good point. I remember when I was young, and I saw my share of vampire movies and frightening movies, but what I ran to my parents' bedroom with at night when I was terrified and had a bad dream was the atomic bomb. What I saw on the news, people building fallout shelters. And my little boy, just recently, I have an 8-year-old boy and a 6-year-old boy, came running into our room one night after having watched a movie called The Lost Boys, which was about vampires and was real scary. And I saw someone who was very grotesque, crying. And of course, I jumped to that assumption and was incorrect. What he said when I finally got him to tell me what was keeping him awake, and his nightmare was that, is the earth going to die? Is the sky really burning up? Are the oceans really going to overflow? Is what he'd seen on the news. So,
okay, what about that? That in the great complexity of this threatening planet,
well, there's no
that this stuff is just for fun.
There's no question that atomic war is scary, and I think I had the same feelings. However, that doesn't mean that these are any less threatening. Because we can find something worse doesn't necessarily mean these are good.
But I think it's unfair to lay the blame of society's ills on the doorstep of horror films and horror filmmakers. It's a violent society we live in. Horror films reflect society, and there's violence everywhere. There's violence on the news. There's violence in sporting events. I turned on the TV the other night and I saw a boxing match, and to me that's more sickening, seeing a spectator sport where people are cheering two guys punching their faces in than a horror film with a guy in a mask running around that you know is fake.
What do you think, Mom?
Well, I'd like to say something to Richard, to something you said before, and I disagree with it totally. It was about how sophisticated our children are today. I think you're very wrong. I think that kids are just kids, and no matter it's 1989 or it was 1956, they're still kids, and I don't think that they should be subjected to this.
Well, I would certainly...
And they have been around the world.
No, I don't think that
and whatever you had
anybody
said.
should be subjected to it. No one is saying put a kid in front of the set and make him watch.
I know, but I don't feel that they're
And I
sophisticated like you're
also
saying.
believe that there are some children that are more sophisticated than others, and most parents know which kids should see or shouldn't see a horror movie before they go to bed because they'll be up all night.
In my life, I remember when I saw the original Dracula. It scared me to death. I was around 10 years old, and I remember I was camping out, and I kept putting my hands over my neck because I was afraid a vampire was going to come and get me. And I have a 10-year-old now, and he won't go to these movies because he feels that they scare him, frankly. They scare him. I mean, he's a kid who has literally been around the world.
Yes, but I think that there are some children that absolutely shouldn't because it makes them uncomfortable, and there are some kids that can. I think that that's really something that
Excuse
a
me.
parent ought to give a little guidance on.
But how do we really know for sure how it
because
is
you know,
affecting them?
you
We
know-
don't
you
know.
know-
But you,
Yes,
you
you
never
do.
really do
Yes, you
know
do.
what your kids are doing when they're not in the home. And the important thing is when they are in the home and they are watching these videos that they've gotten from the stores, if they're R-rated, it's really important that the parents sit down and if they want the child to allow the child to watch it with them and explain what's going on.
Absolutely.
This is a nice special effects thing going on here. Here's what the story is about. So that's very important, the parental involvement.
As a matter of fact, I think you make that point in your book,
Yes, we
okay,
do.
that one of the studies that you quote say that when parents give their kids a good education or positioning as to what's real and what's not real in the world, that the effect of
And it is
these kinds of
effective for parents
things...
to sit down and to point out that these are special effects. That is something that alleviates children's
Is
fears.
the violence realistic, Danielle, or is it just all real silly stuff, you know, with squirts
Well,
of
on the screen,
tomato
it looks
juice?
realistic. I've seen so many special effects done behind the screen, and they're pieces of foam and rubber. And I mean, you'll watch a horror movie one day, and then the next day you'll see a man in a soap opera. You know, it's sort of hard to believe, but I think kids, I disagree, I'm sorry, but I think kids should go see this over the age of where they know what's going on and they know it's special effects. I mean, every person that I've spoken to that are like of the age 8 and to adult have liked horror movies.
I think this is Grimm's fairy tales going back. You know, this is a rather honored tradition.
I think that Danielle is incredibly articulate for a 12-year-old. I mean, I'm staggered. I've got to take a break. Horror movie Scared to Death, our focus. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Stay with us, because horror movie Scared to Death continues after this bloody break.
Jess, what? Come on. I don't have time for this, Jess. What's in there?
Attractive looking guy. Now, I've seen various cover boys before, but look at the cover of Fangoria. I mean, this is really great. Mr. America there. All right, go. Oh, you changed your mind now. Stand up, please.
Well, the gore in the horror movies varies. I mean, you have some horror movies that aren't as bad as others. I mean, also you have like the different levels. I mean, if an 8-year-old were to watch like Nightmare on Elm Street, they might understand it a little bit better than if Seventh Sign. I mean, I had trouble understanding the Seventh Sign about a year ago. And then there are, I mean, sometimes you meet a character and automatically, you know, they're killed off, and you don't get to know them as well. It doesn't affect you, and you don't really know as much. If you were to get introduced to a character and then realize it, and then get to know them, and then they die, it's more of an impact.
Richard, how would you feel if now we have G rating, GP, R, X, etc.? How about if they had like in addition to that, a V for non-violent, 2 Vs for pretty violent, and a VVV for extra special violent?
I think that I think that the rating system, as far as theatrical motion pictures goes, has moved in that direction. PG-13 was added in recent years, and I think that probably an expansion which might further define sex versus violence and how adult the material is not a bad idea at all.
It seems like it's a moot question anyway, because if none of this stuff is enforced, what difference does it make if it's rated or not? If these kids can go in and rent these movies, I mean, I agree that these movies might have an adverse effect on some kids.
It is enforced in the theaters to a large extent.
It is enforced in the theaters, I agree. Okay. But I mean, if they can go and rent the movies, you don't let a kid walk in and buy a bottle of booze.
I think that the technology has gotten a little bit ahead of the social system, and video in stores is still relatively new.
That's an interesting point. The technology has gotten ahead of the social system. I think they haven't dealt with the fact that the video revolution has changed the rules of the game.
Well, how many children actually watch these films in comparison to adults? Is it a much higher ratio?
These are the most popular films.
Horror movies.
Well, these are the most popular films among children.
But it's interesting for us, for Tales from the Dark Side and for Monsters, my TV series, okay, the basic audience is 18 to 49, more women than men.
Really?
I think that you're eliminating a point. I think it shows children that they're inevitable, and I think that's really scary because
what's in it? Like death is inevitable?
with Jason and everything, he could be killed over and over and over again, and he still comes back, and it shows children that they can never be hurt, and I think that's really bad.
That's not true. Jason may not die, but his victims die.
Yeah, that's the point. Okay, go.
But evil is always conquered in the end in those in the Friday the 13th movies. Even if he does come back, it's good versus evil, and good wins.
What about cartoons? They are so violent. I mean, and the children can distinguish between that. So how do you figure why couldn't they distinguish with the horror films?
They can distinguish the difference.
And many of those movies are like cartoons. If you go to any of these Nightmare on Elm Street, any of the other slice or dice movies, and you have a bunch of kids sitting around you, they're howling. They're having the greatest time of their lives. They're laughing, and it's just a big joke.
I believe the movies and horror flicks of today are totally desensitizing the children and just creating a callous society. I feel sorry for the future because murder in Beirut or whatever means nothing anymore. It's
you ever go to a
another
hockey game?
statistic.
Danielle, what do you think?
As you said before, violence is happening all over the world. You see it in cartoons. You see people fall off cliffs. You see people's head gets chopped off. You see people get shot and it goes right through them. Horror movies are like cartoons. They're like news. They're like everything that's going on in the world today, and I think everybody should know about that.
Well, as far as that, so many people like to go to horror movies because people like to be scared. Some people like to cry at movies, some people like to laugh, but that's part of the enjoyment, to go and to get frightened. Well, yeah, when I go to that, I enjoy being scared. I mean, it's not fun then, but you think, oh, God, I'm so scared.
The tradition of sitting around the campfire and telling scary stories goes way back.
We learn through the process of repetition, and one thing I've come to know is that, if to the parents, if you don't want them to see something, learn from past experience yourself. Don't do it. If you don't want to, don't let them go.
Excuse me. Do you people let your children watch these movies?
Richard?
Yes, well, I have a 10-year-old daughter who selectively watches certain of the episodes of the TV shows that I produce that I believe...
What about the heavy slasher trashers?
No, nor does she want to go see them.
Tony?
Well, I don't have any kids, so I'm off the hook.
Yeah, right. But Danielle, your parents let you go?
Yeah, they do. All my friends go. My relatives, my mother even goes. My father goes. My sister's a little scared, but yet she's 5 years old. Horror movies have been around since when they first invented television. If people all over the world disagreed with horror movies, they wouldn't be as popular as they are
Well,
today.
she makes a point. Another one. Take a break. Be right back.
Relax. Power failure.
Hi, my name is Evie, and I'm a parent and I'm a teacher. And having a master's degree in reading, I am definitely against censorship. We cannot censor anything, but parents should have the right to sign cards at video stores and say yes or no, their kids can check out videos. But as a parent, I want to tell everybody that I've seen kids come to school with only exposed to, like, what? Horror movies or all alcohol, all drugs. You got to get your kid well-rounded. Danielle is well-rounded. She's not only seen horror stuff, she's seen other stuff. So they have to be exposed to a little bit of E.B. White or some of the other classics, too. You know, you got to get a kid not just horror films, or we're going to grow up with a...
Fangoria magazine.
Right. You know, I don't like the little kid who sits in my room and draws Freddy Krueger for 8 hours a day. I want to smack him.
Does that really happen?
Oh, yeah. You know, it's blood and guts all over their pages. You know, and I want to see a little happy face every now and then, you know, so that's what I want to
One
see.
with a little trickle of blood during it. Tony, you want to comment?
I think it's great if the kid's drawing Freddy Krueger. It's inspiring him to be creative, you know.
Hello, Geraldo.
Hi, how you doing?
Geraldo, one of your opening statements at the beginning of the show was the fact that we wanted to know the cause and effect, the effect of this violence on persons that were committing other violent acts and everything. And I think it's important that we don't lose sight of the fact of the power of love and guidance of the parents that would give enough character to the children to avoid them from committing any violent acts.
I think it's an excellent
and that
point.
responsibility is very important.
I absolutely agree. I mean, the parental
problem is,
responsibility. Go ahead, Doc.
The parents don't have enough information. I mean, we have a rating system where an R rating can be assigned to the Academy Award-winning Rain Man and assigned to Toolbox Murders.
I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? That Rain Man was an R-rated film. I mean, if there was any example recently in cinema of what the teacher suggested, something really literate and important, it was Rain Man. It got an R rating. So did, what was that called, the Toolbox Murder?
Toolbox Murders is one of the films that we've used in our past research, which, and the title is very, very illustrative. It's exactly what it says, a man with his toolbox bludgeoning, garroting, and stabbing women. The point is that without better guidance, parents can't make a decision. I even heard a parent here today that's been willing to say that they would like their children to see this. They'd like to be informed. The rating system is not doing it.
But you also have critical reviews. If a parent makes a little bit of effort to find out what a movie is about, it's not all that difficult. The rating is what I'll call a quick hit.
But oftentimes the films that are certainly being shown here, and oftentimes the films that children are most interested in renting are not the films that are getting the critical reviews. The critical reviews are often going to be films that are a little more mainstream, and I don't mean to say that these films are necessarily those that are not popular. They certainly are.
I think the point is actually very well taken, that there are a great, like any other genre of movies, there are a great variety of horror movies.
Okay, hold it.
I just want to say how, like, 20 years ago or 30 years ago when Humphrey Bogart, like, shot a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy over that. And now when, like, people's heads get chopped off, there's controversy. It's like, how do we know if it's going to get worse or not?
You mean, where do we go from here?
Yeah. Can we tell?
If anything, horror
I don't know where haircut's going to go from here. That's a great one. I love that. How far... How far we go? How far does it go?
Well, I would have to
Does it, wait, do we run the risk of upping the ante so much that the acts of horror portrayed in order to sell Halloween 6 and 19 and 25 will be so disgusting that they really will come to a point that violence will be so desensitized to it, it'll be meaningless.
Horror films have been getting less violent in recent years because of the MPAA.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the reason. I think that the good horror films that have survived and bared repeated watching over the years are those that primarily rely on story with occasional special effects as punctuation points. I think it was interesting to see this year that the new Freddy and the new Jason, okay, did very, very small box office when, compared to Pet Sematary. Okay,
yes.
Which is a basic 3/4 to 80% storyline with a couple of special effects at the end to bring a point home.
And the point being?
The point being that
I tell you what, give me 2 minutes and then you can tell us the point. We'll be right back. Gotta take a break. Is that the same dress you wore?
Yeah.
Oh, you got the blood off. That's good.
Yeah.
Look at this little party favorite here for your little costume party. What every kid wants, a nice little meat cleaver from Halloween hockey mask. Very scary meat cleaver indeed. In your acting, do you have any desires, any ambition to go and be the new queen of horror films?
I would rather
Or at least
not.
the princess?
Well, I would rather not be known as the horror movie princess. Even though I've been into horror movies, I don't do it to be known as a horror movie princess. I do it because I like doing it. And I've
Is it
always...
hard for you, like, to scream?
No.
Would you give us an example of your best scream?
Okay. Cover your ears.
Okay, ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Show another clip, Jim Bob, of Danielle's film. It's very interesting. Let's hear her at work. Go ahead.
You want her! Here she is! He's gone! No! Little girl! Come and get her! Come and get your little girl! Come and take us home! Let's play a game. Catch the little girl. Catch. Mike. Get the little girl, then you're home and safe.
It's a good thing you're such a good screamer. I mean, it seems like most of the dialogue there.
I have a quick comment to say. I disagree with Richard and Tony because they're saying that, these movies have no effect. And you were saying how the parents...
No, I didn't say that they have no effect.
And you were saying how the parents, they should just not let their children watch these movies. But I'm talking about from the commercials alone. I was babysitting a friend of mine's kid, and the little boy's 2 years old. And he scared the living daylights out of him. He came to the kitchen with that fake knife saying, kill me, I'm Jason, I'm Jason. And 2 years old.
Who bought him the
and
fake
this is from the commercials alone.
Who bought him the fake knife?
I don't know. I'm
That's
just
bad
saying.
parenting.
I'm just saying that the fact from the commercials
Let me say
alone,
this to you, that there are commercials that come in between lots of programs that offend me, not only with respect to that. As an adult, okay, I think that there's an aspect of that you're going to have no matter what.
You're talking about Pet Sematary. The book was much better than the picture.
Cut him to the quick.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the panel what they think about a rating system for videotapes, because I'm in the business and a lot of films that I work on go to the ratings board, get an X rating, and then when they come out in video, all the scenes are put back in.
You mean they tone it down to get away from the X, and then in home video
comes out in home video. All those scenes go back in, and I'd like to know
We
if
should have
they're
an A rating.
in favor or against a rating system.
An A rating for adult films. And also, I think that the job of the parenting shouldn't be in the hands of the video store owner or the filmmaking. It should be in the household. A parent should take enough
Wait a
interest in
second.
what
Now,
the
if a
kids
film
watch.
has an R rating because the offending scenes have been cut out, then it's issued in home video. Is this an accurate statement that the gentleman makes, that they restore the offending scenes for the home version and they're not rechecked by the ratings board?
No, then they'll release them unrated. There'll be an R-rated version and an unrated version.
So you're putting quite a burden on the parent then. The parent has no alternative, as far as I can understand, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, than to screen the whole film.
No, they need to see whether or not there's an R rating on the box.
Well, if it's an uncut version that you get at the video stores, those are usually the ones to stay away from. But again,
say that again. That's an important message.
You have the uncut versions. If it says uncut versions, that means all the scenes have been restored, and so you usually get the more graphic violence. But I think we just can't lay the rap on the parents. I agree with you, Geraldo, that there are certain things that the parents can't do. So if you can't keep your kids away from horror movies, then, as Richard said, you need to educate them and need to be educated yourself. If you check out your cable stations, for example, I consulted to the Movie Channel, who are running all sorts of classic horror films, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy. I think this is a good place for you to start with your kids, to show them that this is an art form and where it has evolved to today.
It definitely is, and at least it definitely can be an art form. I mean, the movies that Dr. Gardea just mentioned truly are classic films.
You know what is very disturbing about this art form, and I see it as I watch...
Okay, can you hold it for 2 minutes? Because we've got to take a break. Say yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay, we'll be right back.
I'm wondering why it's not a little boy that's being tortured and being pursued in this film, and why it's a little girl. Our analysis has suggested, as we look across many horror films, that men and women are killed. Men just as often, in fact, as women. But when women are killed, it takes twice as long. And women, it takes
if this
twice
is true,
as long.
Then it's not an accident.
Not only does it take twice as long, the inevitable consequence, the most frequent consequence of sexual activity in these films, when it's portrayed, and it's portrayed quite often, is death.
Stop. Implication?
The implication to me is that what we have with Danielle is a groundbreaking film. We've now moved into children, and in particular, young women, little girls, who are now being pursued and penetrated by knives. There's a problem there. There's a problem with the fact that it is Danielle and a little girl and not a little boy being pursued in this film. And I think it's deliberate
She
on the
doesn't
part
get
of the
killed in the
filmmaker.
film, and it's a tradition.
I said pursued and being penetrated by knives. Now,
But she doesn't get stabbed in the movie?
It seems to... I can only make the inference. I have not seen the entire film.
Well, I think that's a good point, that when you look at clips, it's very difficult sometimes when you take things out of context to get the motivation for what's come
I want to
before.
let Danielle tell us what happens at the end of the clip, but Richard, what about the broader implication of what Dr. Lynn suggests?
Oh, I would agree with him. I would say that there are good horror films and bad horror films, and there are ones that push the limits beyond what is in good taste.
Danielle's
we
agent?
moved into the use of minors now.
Her publicist. Okay, here's Danielle's publicist. Is Danielle used... Oh, introduce you first. I'm sorry.
Steve Tenenbaum.
Yes,
Okay.
Is your client, this beautiful young girl, being used as a kind of a sex symbol, a sexual sacrifice in a sense?
Well, I don't think so. I think somebody has to have an understanding here of these showbiz children that are involved in these horror films to begin with. Most of them are rather special gifted children that are put in kind of adult situations very early in their life, that come out of modeling many times, working 3, 4, 5 years old with adult fashion photographer, stylist. It's a fun situation on a set.
No one's saying Danielle was responsible. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the film producers and the directors have deliberately chosen a woman to use, and a very young woman, underage. It used to be that at least the woman being garroted, stabbed, and bludgeoned to death in a sexual situation was over 18. It's interesting to me that we've now moved to a situation where it's a little girl.
But I think that what that indicates is that the end of the cycle is near, that they've run out of ways to exaggerate things.
It's kind of like what child pornography is, too, perhaps.
Yes,
I agree.
Danielle,
100%.
you're
Okay. I have a very important thing to make, okay? In Halloween 4 and in Halloween 5, it shows that there's always a person to back you up and to stand up for you. You're not in the world alone. In this scene, as you see, Donald Pleasance, but I can't tell the ending of this, if you would have seen one more longer, he wasn't trying to give me away to somebody. He was trying to set up a trap for him.
I don't think that he was. I think he was trying to protect you. What was very interesting
He
to
was,
me
which-
was that Donald kept saying, she's only a little girl. She's only a little girl.
But I'm his little girl. I'm his niece and his only living relative, okay?
I can only go by the clip, but it
Dr.
seems to me it
Gardier,
occurs over
too much
and over.
being read into this?
Yeah, I think there is. I happen to be a fan of horror films, if you couldn't tell by now, and I see an opposite trend, really. Many of the horror films, the heroes are now females. They're heroines who lead the films, and they're the ones who kill the monsters.
Terminator, Aliens.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
You have a female
There's
lead
an
that
interesting-
is really very strong.
And women as victims goes back to silent days with the perils of Pauline.
There are other analyses that suggest that women do survive. There are many women that do, but as it turns out, the woman
There
that
are also
survives...
some horror films that don't mix sex and violence.
Absolutely.
The women who survives?
The women that survives happens to be the good girl all of the time. The sexually promiscuous woman, as content analyses have revealed, usually dies.
Well, that
But how many
happens in real
films have you
life.
looked at, though? How many of these?
How many films?
Probably random sample of up to 60, 70
60, 70, that's enough.
across several studies.
600, yeah, well. Break. Horror movies, scared to death has been our focus. Terry, as a parent, as an actor, I give you the last 15 seconds there.
I was just having a thought, and
hey, great.
It occurs to me that the concern about desensitization to violence is a valid concern. But I find that as much as I've seen violence on television and in films, when I go down here in the street and have an occasion to see actual violence on the street, I'm shocked at how I'm not desensitized to violence. That violence has an amazing, actual violence has a terrifying effect on me.
It is, and it is terrifying. You've learned, parents, you know that the ball is again in our court to take whatever discretion we can to protect our kids, to explain things to our kids. Tonight's Halloween. You know, again, it's the parents' responsibility. Take care of your kids. I hope they have a safe trick and treating day. Horror movies, the debate will go on. See them or don't see them. Love you. Happy Halloween. Thanks for being here. Thank all of our guests. Wonderful. Danielle, you all and all. Thank you. Nice to see you. Tony, Richard, there we go.